Welcome back to another story on Infidelity Tales Lab. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1, 18 Years. Lawrence Fuller stared at the Columbia diploma on his wall, Business Administration, summa cum laude, class of 2005. It hung beside a faded photograph of himself at 25, sharp-eyed and hungry, standing outside Becker Industries headquarters on his first day. That young man had believed the world was his for the taking. He hadn't been wrong, exactly, just naive about whose hands would do the taking. The memory surfaced unbidden. Marcus Becker's office, May 2007. Lawrence had been the youngest senior analyst in company history, his quarterly reports revolutionizing their market strategy. Marcus had looked up from Lawrence's latest presentation with those calculating eyes. "My wife died last night," Marcus had said, his voice flat. "Heart failure. The boy is 6 months old." Lawrence had stammered condolences, unsure why he was being told this. "I need someone I can trust," Marcus continued. "Someone smart. The nanny's steal. My family wants the inheritance. You're ambitious, Fuller. I can see it. But you're also," he'd paused, studying Lawrence like a spreadsheet, decent, rare combination. The offer had been simple. Move into the Becker estate, raise Brendan, receive triple his analyst salary plus full benefits. Temporary, Marcus had promised. 2, maybe 3 years until I find the right woman to be his mother. Lawrence had been engaged to Hannah McKenzie then, a bright pediatric nurse with plans for their future. She'd understood when he explained the opportunity. The money would let them buy a house, start their life together properly. 2 years, she'd agreed, kissing him goodbye. Then we'll have our own family. But Marcus never remarried. 2 years became 5, then 10. Hannah's calls grew less frequent, then stopped. Lawrence attended her wedding to a surgeon in 2012, sent his congratulations, and drove home to a 7-year-old boy who'd drawn him a picture titled "My Best Friend Larry." He'd stayed. Now, at 44, Lawrence watched through his office window as Brendan Becker crossed the quad at Princeton, capped and gowned brilliant in the June sun. 18 years. He'd taught the boy to ride a bike, to tie a tie, to solve for X, and stand up to bullies. He'd sat through every parent-teacher conference, every soccer game, every late-night conversation about girls and God and the meaning of success. "Mr. Fuller?" His assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. "Mr. Becker wants to see you in his office." Lawrence's stomach tightened. Marcus rarely summoned him during work hours. Their relationship existed in careful compartments. At the office, Lawrence was Special Projects Coordinator, a vague title for the man who quietly fixed Marcus's mistakes and ghost-wrote his strategy memos. At home, he was, what? Not family. Marcus had made that clear 1,000 subtle ways. He straightened his tie and headed to the executive floor. Marcus stood at his window, silhouetted against the Chicago skyline. At 59, he still cut an imposing figure, tall, silver-haired, with the kind of confidence that came from inherited wealth and enforced deference. "Brendan graduates today," Marcus said without turning. "Yes, sir. 2 o'clock ceremony. You've done well with him. Better than I expected." Marcus turned, and something in his expression made Lawrence's pulse quicken. "He's been accepted to Harvard Business School. Deferred enrollment, of course. He'll start here Monday as my executive assistant." "That's wonderful." Lawrence meant it. He'd spent countless hours helping Brendan with his applications, his essays. "Which brings us to you." Marcus opened a folder on his desk. "Your services are no longer required. I'm terminating your employment effective today. HR has prepared your final paycheck, including 2 weeks severance." The words didn't register at first. Lawrence blinked. "I'm sorry. You were the help, Fuller. Expensive help, I'll grant you, but still. The boy's grown now. We don't need you anymore." The casual cruelty of it stole Lawrence's breath. "Marcus, I've worked here for 18 years. I've babysat my son." "Yes, and you were compensated generously." Marcus's smile was thin, professional. "Don't make this difficult. You've had a nice run. Most people in your position would be grateful." "My position? You're a glorified nanny with a business degree. Did you think you were something more?" Marcus leaned forward. "Every strategy you've drafted, I've had my real analysts review and improve. Every success you claim, you managed under my supervision. You've been coasting on proximity to power, Fuller. It's time to rejoin the real world. The lie was so brazen, so complete, that Lawrence almost laughed. He'd saved this company twice. Once in 2013, when the Japanese expansion was collapsing, again in 2019, when the Villanueva merger nearly destroyed them. Marcus knew it. The board didn't. Security will escort you out, Marcus said, pressing his intercom. Don't contact Brendan. He's a Becker. You're just a man we paid to raise him. Chapter 2. The Real Game. Lawrence had driven home in a daze, his office belongings in a cardboard box. The security escort had been humiliating. Todd Walls, a guard he'd gotten hired 5 years ago, couldn't meet his eyes as they walked through the lobby. His apartment in Lincoln Park felt smaller than usual, the walls closing in. He'd sold his Columbia diploma years ago to pay for Brendan's orthodontist. Marcus had forgotten to update the dental coverage. Most of his possessions were books on market theory and framed photos of a boy who wasn't his son. He poured bourbon he couldn't afford and tried to piece together what had just happened. The truth was he'd been a fool. 18 years of believing competence mattered. That loyalty counted for something. He'd watched Marcus take credit for his work. The Fuller strategy, they called it privately in the boardroom, though the public documents bore Marcus's signature. He'd swallowed his pride because Brendan needed stability, because he'd promised Hannah's ghost he'd see this through. But Brendan was grown now, and Lawrence had nothing. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Don't leave town. Trust me. B. Before he could respond, a knock echoed through the apartment. Lawrence checked the peephole, and his heart stopped. Brendan Becker stood on his porch, still wearing his Princeton cap, his expression hard in a way Lawrence had never seen. Lawrence opened the door. You shouldn't be here. Your father said. I know what he said. Brendan pushed past him, moving with Marcus's confidence, but none of his cruelty. I was there, in his office, hidden in the conference room. What? He's been planning this for months, Larry. I found the termination papers in his study last week. Dated for today. Brendan's jaw clenched. I needed to hear him say it. Needed to know for sure. Lawrence sank onto his couch. Brendan, this isn't your fight. Your father and I. 18 years, Brendan interrupted. 18 years you raised me. You think I don't know what you sacrificed? Hannah Mackenzie. Your career. Your life. He pulled out his phone, tapped the screen. You think I don't know whose strategies actually saved this company? Marcus's voice filled the apartment, tinny but clear through the phone speaker. The Fuller reports? Christ, Garrett, the man's a savant. But he's too soft for leadership. No killer instinct. I use his analysis, attach my name. The board thinks I'm a genius. Why change what works? Another voice, Garrett Page, the CFO. What about when he figures it out? He won't. He's too busy playing daddy to my kid. Besides, who'd believe him? I'm Marcus Becker. He's hired help. Brendan, stop the recording. I have 47 conversations like this. 3 years of him admitting he steals your work. Him laughing about it with the other executives. Lawrence stared at the boy, no, the man he'd raised. How did you? You taught me to ask questions, to look deeper. Brendan's smile was sharp. I've been recording his calls since I was 15. Started as paranoia, became insurance. Then last month, I found something else. Something bigger. He handed Lawrence a flash drive. Ricardo Farrell, the FDA inspector who approved our pharmaceutical division's clinical trials in 2020. Dad paid him $2 million to falsify safety data. The drug went to market. 16 people died from the side effects Dad knew about and buried. The room spun. Brendan, if this is real, it's real. I have the wire transfers, the emails, the original test results. Everything. Brendan leaned forward, and Lawrence saw something frightening in his eyes. Not rage, but calculation. Marcus's son, after all. I also have documentation of every strategy you've ever written, with timestamps proving you authored them before Dad presented them. I have performance reviews where he privately praised your work while publicly claiming credit. I have testimony from 12 employees willing to confirm you were the real brains behind Becker Industries' success. Why are you telling me this? Because in 30 minutes, I'm sending everything to the board of directors. The theft of intellectual property, the FDA corruption, the wire fraud. All of it. Brendan's voice was ice. The emergency board meeting is scheduled for 6 p.m. They'll have no choice but to remove him immediately. Criminal investigation will follow. Lawrence's hands shook. Brendan, your father will be ruined. Prison. You'll lose everything. He's not my father. The words cut like glass. A father doesn't call the man who raised his son to help. A father doesn't steal and lie and let people die for profit. Brendan stood, straightening his jacket. You want to know what he told me at graduation? Before the ceremony? He said, don't get too attached to Fuller. I'm letting him go today. Time you learned that sentiment is expensive. Lawrence remembered Brendan at 6 years old, crying for his mother. Lawrence had held him all night, promising everything would be okay. Brendan at 12, when bullies mocked his stutter. Lawrence had taught him confidence, taught him to speak clearly, to believe in himself. Brendan at 16, heartbroken over his first girlfriend. Lawrence had driven him to the lake, let him rage and cry and heal. What do you need from me? Lawrence asked quietly. Nothing. You've given me everything already. Brendan headed for the door, then paused. But you should probably answer your phone when the board calls. They're going to have questions about who should lead this company while they sort out the criminal investigation. He left Lawrence sitting in his small apartment, holding a flash drive that would destroy a man and save a company. The phone rang 27 minutes later. Chapter 3. The Call. Marcus Becker's voice was unrecognizable. What did you do? What the fuck did you do? Lawrence kept his tone neutral. I'm sorry, Marcus. I don't understand. The board, they just fired me, suspended my access, froze my accounts. They're talking about criminal charges. His voice cracked. They mentioned your name. They have things, recordings, documents. How did you? I didn't do anything, Lawrence said truthfully. I've been home all afternoon. Bullshit. Someone gave them. Marcus stopped. Lawrence could hear the moment realization struck. Brendan. Oh God, Brendan. What did that little bastard? Careful, Lawrence said softly. That's your son. You poisoned him against me. 18 years of filling his head with. I taught him right from wrong. I taught him that competence matters, that integrity matters. Apparently, he learned those lessons well. Marcus's breathing was ragged. They're saying I falsified FDA reports. That people died. That's not. I never meant for anyone to. But they did die. Lawrence felt strangely calm. 16 people. Because you rushed a drug to market that you knew was dangerous. Because profit mattered more than safety. You self-righteous piece of shit. You worked for me for 18 years. You never questioned anything. I never knew, Lawrence countered. You kept me in my compartment, remember? Just to help. I coordinated projects, drafted strategies. I wasn't invited to executive meetings. I didn't see financial records. Silence. Then, they're offering you my job. Did you know that? Interim CEO while they investigate. They called you the invisible genius behind Becker Industries' success. Marcus laughed bitterly. My own son destroyed me to give you my company. He destroyed you because you deserved it, Lawrence said. The company is just a bonus. I'll fight this. I have lawyers. Lawyers cost money, Marcus. And your accounts are frozen. The evidence is ironclad. You'll be lucky to avoid federal prison. Lawrence stood, looking at the diploma he'd bought back last month. Found it in a pawn shop for $50. You wanted to teach Brendan that sentiment is expensive. Congratulations. He learned that lesson too. He hung up. The text from the unknown number came 3 minutes later. Board meeting in 90 minutes. With a Navy suit. You're going to need to look the part. Brendan. Lawrence smiled. Chapter 4. The Board. The Becker Industries boardroom occupied the entire 42nd floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan. Lawrence had been in this room exactly twice before. Once to deliver coffee during a crisis, once to fix Marcus's laptop when IT was unavailable. Now 8 board members stared at him like he was a ghost made flesh. Garrett Page, the CFO, spoke first. His salt and pepper beard couldn't hide the exhaustion in his eyes. Mr. Fuller, thank you for coming on short notice. I'm honestly not sure why I'm here. Lawrence said carefully. Because we've been idiots. This from Joanna Dunlap, the board's youngest member at 39, a venture capitalist who'd pushed for modernization. For years, we've been idiots. She slid a tablet across the table. Lawrence recognized his own handwriting, the market analysis from 2013 that had saved the Japanese expansion. His signature at the bottom, dated March 15th. Below it, an identical document bearing Marcus's signature, dated March 22nd. We found 73 instances of this pattern, Garrett said quietly. You draft a strategy. 1 to 2 weeks later, Marcus presents the same strategy as his own work. Sometimes word for word, sometimes revised, which usually meant he made it worse. John Vaughn, the silver-haired chairman, leaned forward. Why didn't you ever say anything? Lawrence chose his words carefully. Marcus Becker gave me a job when my career was just starting. He trusted me with his son. I believed I was supporting the company, that my role was to help him succeed. You were covering for a fraud, Joanna said bluntly. A fraud who committed corporate manslaughter. The tablet screen changed. FDA documents. Test results showing cardiac risks. An email from Marcus to Ricardo Farrell. I don't care about anomalies. We need market approval before Q4. Name your price. Lawrence felt sick. 16 deaths, John said. 16 people took our medication believing it was safe because our CEO bribed an FDA inspector to lie. The lawsuits alone will cost us $800 million. The criminal investigation. He trailed off. Where's Marcus now? Lawrence asked. Federal detention. Arrested 3 hours ago. Garrett's expression was grim. He tried to flee to the Cayman Islands. TSA flagged him. FBI was waiting. Lawrence processed this. Brendan had moved faster than he'd imagined. We need new leadership, John continued. Someone the public will trust. Someone who actually understands this company's operations. He paused. Brendan Becker gave us something else. A recommendation letter. Another document appeared on the tablet. Brendan's Princeton letterhead, dated yesterday. To the board of directors. My father built Becker Industries on theft and lies. Lawrence Fuller built it on brilliance and integrity. He raised me when Marcus Becker couldn't be bothered. He saved this company when Marcus Becker nearly destroyed it. If you want to survive what's coming, you'll make the obvious choice. The man who taught me everything worth knowing deserves everything he was denied. Brendan Becker. The room was silent. We're offering you interim CEO, John said. Salary of $2.4 million annually, full executive compensation package, stock options. You'll lead us through the investigation, the restructuring, the lawsuits. If you succeed, when you succeed, we'll make it permanent. Lawrence's mouth was dry. I'm not qualified. I've never been an executive. You've been running this company from the shadows for 15 years, Joanna interrupted. Every successful strategy since 2010 came from your desk. Marcus just took credit and collected the bonus checks. She smiled coldly. We checked. Your compensation was $180,000 annually. Marcus paid himself $12 million last year for your work. The injustice of it hit Lawrence like a physical blow. There's one condition, John added. Brendan Becker wants to stay on as executive assistant. To you. He says he has more to learn. Where's Brendan now? Downstairs. Waiting. Garrett stood. Mr. Fuller, this company is hemorrhaging. Stock price dropped 40% today. Clients are fleeing. Employees are panicking. We need someone who can steer us through the storm. Someone people will believe in. Lawrence thought about Hannah McKenzie, married to her surgeon, probably watching her kids play soccer right now. He thought about his Columbia diploma, the hungry 25-year-old who believed merit mattered. He thought about 18 years of invisible work, of swallowed pride, of believing the lie that he was just the help. Mostly, he thought about a 6-month-old baby who'd lost his mother, and a man who'd chosen to abandon him to hire care rather than sacrifice an ounce of his own ambition. I accept, Lawrence said, on one condition. Every employee who helped Marcus hide his crimes gets fired. Every executive who knew about the FDA situation and stayed silent, gone. We rebuild with people who have actual integrity. John's smile was fierce. Already in progress. 12 executives resigned this afternoon rather than face investigation. 3 more are being terminated. We're cleaning house, Mr. Fuller. We're just hoping there's a house left when we're done. There will be, Lawrence said with more confidence than he felt. I've been fixing Marcus's mistakes for 18 years. This is just one more mess to clean up. One more thing, Joanna said. The press conference is scheduled for tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. You need to be ready. The media will eat this alive. Silver-haired CEO arrested for manslaughter. Unknown genius promoted to save the company. It's every journalist's dream story. Lawrence nodded. I'll be ready. As the meeting adjourned, Garrett pulled him aside. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. I knew. Not about the FDA, but about the stolen strategies. I told myself it didn't matter where the ideas came from as long as the company succeeded. That was cowardice. I'm resigning effective immediately. Don't, Lawrence said. I'll need people I can trust. People who admit their mistakes. He met Garrett's eyes. Stay. Help me fix this. That's how you make it right. Garrett nodded slowly. Thank you, Mr. Fuller. Call me Lawrence. Chapter 5. Father and Son. Brendan was waiting in what had been Marcus's office, would now be Lawrence's office. The younger man stood at the window, hands in his pockets, staring at the city lights. You didn't have to destroy him, Lawrence said quietly. Brendan turned. In a low light, he looked eerily like Marcus, same height, same sharp features. But his eyes were different. Softer. More human. Yes, I did. Brendan's voice was steady. You want to know what he told me when I was 9? I got an A on my science project, the one you helped me with about renewable energy. I was so excited. I ran to show him. He smiled bitterly. He looked at it for maybe 5 seconds. Then he said, Beckers don't celebrate second place. Come back when you've won something that matters. Lawrence remembered that project. Remembered Brendan's tears when it hadn't won the science fair. He'd taken the boy for ice cream, told him that effort mattered more than awards. You were there for everything, Brendan continued. First day of school, first girlfriend, first heartbreak, college applications. You taught me to shave. You taught me to drive. You sat through my terrible GarageBand phase and pretended to enjoy it. His voice cracked. He wrote checks. You gave me a childhood. He's still your father. Biologically. But you're my dad. Brendan pulled out his phone, scrolled through something. I need to show you something else. Something I didn't give the board. He handed the phone to Lawrence. A video file dated 3 weeks ago. Marcus's study. Marcus and someone Lawrence didn't recognize. A thin man with nervous hands. Marcus's voice. Fuller's getting suspicious. Asking questions about the strategy reports. We need insurance. The thin man. Insurance. Fabricate something. Embezzlement. Sexual harassment. I don't care. Something that'll discredit him if he ever tries to take credit for his work. Just make sure it's airtight. Lawrence's blood went cold. Fernando Ramos, Brendan said. Head of legal. Dad was going to frame you. Make sure you could never claim credit for your strategies, even if you tried. He took the phone back. I didn't give this to the board because it would have seemed like overkill. But I need you to understand, he wasn't just using you. He was planning to destroy you if you ever became a threat. The casual evil of it staggered Lawrence. 18 years of loyalty, and Marcus had been preparing to burn him. Why did you really do this? Lawrence asked. The truth, Brendan. The younger man was quiet for a long moment. When I was 14, you took me to that Red Sox game. Remember? Lawrence nodded. Brendan had been struggling with depression, failing classes. Lawrence had taken a week off work, driven him to Boston, spent 7 days just talking, listening, being present. You told me that success without integrity is just noise. That real power comes from being someone people trust, someone they believe in. Brendan's eyes glistened. You said, the world will try to teach you that winning is all that matters. Don't listen. How you win defines who you are. I remember. Marcus taught me the opposite. He taught me that winning is everything. That loyalty is weakness. That people are tools to be used and discarded. Brendan straightened. I had to choose which man's lessons to follow. The one who share my blood or the one who share my life. This is still going to hurt, Lawrence said gently. He's going to prison. You'll be the son of a criminal. Better than being the son of Marcus Becker. Brendan managed to smile. Besides, I'll be the son of Lawrence Fuller, too. That's the part I'm proud of. Lawrence pulled him into a hug. Brendan held on tight. And for a moment, he was 6 years old again, crying for a mother he'd never known. Thank you, Lawrence whispered. For everything. Thank you for raising me, Brendan replied. For teaching me that people matter more than profit, even if I had to destroy someone to prove it. Chapter 6, The Storm. The press conference was a feeding frenzy. Lawrence stood at the podium, cameras flashing, while reporters shouted questions over each other. Joanna Dunlap stood to his left, John Vaughn to his right, a show of united board support. Mr. Fuller, how long have you known about Marcus Becker's criminal activities? I learned about the FDA violations yesterday, same time as the board. I was not privy to executive financial decisions. Sources say you've been writing strategy reports that Mr. Becker claimed as his own. Is that true? I contributed to many strategic initiatives over my 18 years at Becker Industries. Mr. Becker supervised and approved all final reports. Technically true, morally false. But Lawrence wasn't here to settle scores. He was here to save a company. Mr. Fuller, you raised Marcus Becker's son. Some are calling this a betrayal. I raised Brendan Becker. Lawrence interrupted, his voice steel. I also served this company with integrity for 18 years. When evidence of criminal wrongdoing emerged, the board acted appropriately. My personal history with the Becker family doesn't change the facts. 16 people died because of falsified safety data. That's not a betrayal. That's justice. The room exploded with questions. Lawrence fielded them mechanically, his media training kicking in. Joanna had drilled him for 3 hours last night. Stay calm, stick to facts, project confidence. What's your first priority as CEO? Victim compensation. We're establishing a $500 million fund for the families affected by our medication. Full transparency in our pharmaceutical division. Complete FDA review of all our products. He paused. And rebuilding trust. This company forgot that we serve people, not profit margins. That changes today. After 45 minutes, John ended the conference. Lawrence walked off stage, legs shaking, and found Brendan waiting in the hallway. You did great, Brendan said. I'm terrified. Good. Means you care. Brendan handed him a tablet. First crisis. Our biggest client, Simon Villanueva Enterprises, is threatening to cancel their $200 million contract. They want assurances the company won't collapse. Lawrence scanned the email. Villanueva was right to be worried. Losing that contract would trigger a cascade of cancellations. Competitors were already circling, offering sweetheart deals to poach their clients. Give me a meeting with Simon Villanueva, in person, today if possible. He's in New York. Then we're going to New York. Lawrence checked his watch. How fast can you book a private jet? Brendan grinned. Already done. Wheels up in 90 minutes. You're terrifying. You know that. I learned from the best. Brendan's expression turned serious. Larry, there's something else. Marcus is trying to make bail. His lawyers are claiming he's not a flight risk despite the airport incident. If he gets out, he won't hurt us, Lawrence said. He has no power anymore. No money, no influence. He's just a man facing the consequences of his choices. His lawyers are good. Clay Cahill, Wendell Young, the whole Wellington and Associates team. They're arguing prosecutorial overreach, claiming the FDA violations were honest mistakes. Lawrence thought about 16 dead people. Honest mistakes. Let them argue, he said. The evidence speaks for itself. Our job is to save this company. Marcus Becker is the FBI's problem now. But 3 hours later, flying over Pennsylvania, Brendan's phone pinged with a news alert. Shit, what? Brendan showed him the screen. Marcus Becker released on $10 million bond. Trial set for January. Lawrence's stomach dropped. Ow! His accounts are frozen. Elmer Baxter. Brendan's voice was grim. Marcus's brother. The one who runs the hedge fund in Connecticut. He posted bail. I didn't know Marcus had a brother. They're estranged. Have been for years. But blood is blood, apparently. Brendan pulled up a photo. Elmer Becker looked like a softer version of Marcus. Same silver hair, but with kind eyes. Elmer's the good one. Runs charity marathons. Donates to children's hospitals. Complete opposite of Marcus. Lawrence processed this. Marcus was free, angry, humiliated, and now he'd have time to plan revenge. This complicates things, he said quietly. It gets worse. Brendan scrolled through more alerts. He's giving interviews, claiming you manipulated me against him, that you've been embezzling funds for years and framed him to cover your tracks. The fabricated evidence. Marcus was using the playbook he'd prepared. Can he prove it? Lawrence asked. No, because it's not true. But he doesn't need proof, just enough doubt to muddy the waters. Brendan's jaw clenched. He's smart. Evil but smart. He's going to make this a war. Lawrence looked out the window at the clouds below. Somewhere down there, Marcus Becker was plotting, calling in favors, preparing his counterattack. Then we'd better win, Lawrence said. Chapter 7. The Counterstrike. Simon Villanueva's office overlooked Central Park, a monument to old money and older power. The man himself was 73, silver-bearded, with eyes that missed nothing. Mr. Fuller, he said, not rising. You've had an interesting week. That's one word for it. Lawrence sat without being invited, a power move Brendan had suggested. Show confidence, not deference. You're considering canceling our contract. I'm considering protecting my company from association with yours. Marcus Becker is claiming you're a fraud and embezzler. That's not a good look. Marcus Becker is a desperate man facing federal charges for manslaughter, Lawrence countered. He's throwing accusations because his own crimes are indefensible. But I'm not here to defend myself. I'm here to defend Becker Industries. Simon's eyebrow arched. Bold. Lawrence pulled out a folder. Our contract is $200 million over 3 years. But the actual value to you is significantly higher. Our logistics platform saves you $47 million annually in shipping costs. Our data analytics increased your market share by 23% in the Northeast Corridor. Our pharmaceutical partnership provides exclusive access to 3 breakthrough treatments your competitors can't touch. All work product from before you became CEO. All work product I designed, Lawrence said quietly. The logistics platform? I wrote that algorithm in 2016. Marcus took credit. The data analytics? My model, my implementation. The pharmaceutical partnership? I negotiated it personally while Marcus was too busy with his embezzlement schemes to notice. He slid the folder across the desk. Inside, documentation of everything. Timestamped drafts, email trails, even testimony from IT staff confirming Lawrence's authorship. Simon read slowly, methodically. When he finished, he looked at Lawrence with new respect. Why didn't you ever claim credit? Because I was stupid, Lawrence said. I thought loyalty mattered. I thought doing good work was enough. I was wrong on both counts. And now I'm CEO of a company in crisis. A company you're considering abandoning because you don't trust me. Lawrence leaned forward. I can't change the past, but I can promise you this. Under my leadership, Becker Industries will be the most transparent, most reliable partner you have. Every contract, milestone, every deliverable, every financial statement, you'll have complete visibility. No more secrets, no more lies, just results. Simon was quiet for a long time. Marcus called me this morning, offered to testify that you stole proprietary information, that you've been planning this coup for years. Did he offer any proof? No, because there isn't any. They're just a desperate man who can't accept that his son chose integrity over blood. Lawrence stood. I'm not asking you to trust me based on words. I'm asking you to trust me based on results. Give me 6 months. If the company isn't stronger, more profitable, more transparent than it's ever been, cancel the contract. No penalty, no questions asked. Simon studied him. You're betting your reputation on this. I'm betting my life on this. Lawrence extended his hand. 6 months. That's all I need to prove I'm the right person to lead Becker Industries. Simon shook his hand. 6 months, Mr. Fuller. Don't make me regret this. Walking out of the building, Brendan let out a breath he'd been holding. That was insane. That was necessary. Lawrence felt lighter than he had in days. 1 client saved. 50 more to go. His phone rang. Garrett Page. Lawrence, we have a problem. Marcus is suing for wrongful termination. $500 million in damages. Claims the board violated his employment contract. Lawrence closed his eyes. Of course Marcus would strike back. Of course he'd... Wait. Garrett, Marcus's contract. Does it have a morality clause? Let me check. Sounds of shuffling papers. Yes. Section 14, subsection C. Company may terminate employment without compensation if executive engages in criminal conduct that damages company reputation or... Garrett stopped. Oh, he just invalidated his own lawsuit, Lawrence said, smiling. The moment he was arrested for FDA violations, the morality clause kicked in. He's not entitled to a single dollar. His lawyers will argue he hasn't been convicted yet. Let them. The clause says criminal conduct, not criminal conviction. The evidence alone is sufficient. Lawrence felt the pieces clicking into place. File a countersuit. Demand return of all bonuses paid based on stolen work product, my work product. Every dollar he collected for strategies I created. That could be $80 million. Then we're suing for $80 million. Use it for victim compensation. Lawrence's voice hardened. Marcus want a war? We'll give him one. Chapter 8. The Trial of Public Opinion. The next 3 weeks were brutal. Marcus appeared on every news show that would have him, playing the role of betrayed father. I took Lawrence Fuller into my home, he told Madeline Davenport on 60 Minutes, his voice breaking perfectly. I trusted him with my son, and he poisoned that boy against me. Used him to stage a corporate coup. The media loved the narrative. Evil CEO versus noble whistleblower. Some outlets painted Lawrence as a hero. Others suggested he was a manipulative opportunist. The truth, as always, was buried under clickbait headlines. Meanwhile, Becker Industries hemorrhaged. 3 more major clients canceled contracts. Stock price dropped another 20%. Employees leaked anonymous complaints about uncertainty and lack of leadership. Lawrence worked 20-hour days, putting out fires. He fired 12 executives tied to the FDA scandal. He restructured the pharmaceutical division. He personally called every major client, offering the same deal he'd given Simon Villanueva, 6 months to prove himself. Brendan was everywhere, his youth and earnestness helping sell the new vision. The media loved him too. Princeton graduate, whistleblower, betrayed son choosing justice over family. He gave interviews explaining why he'd turned on Marcus, always emphasizing Lawrence's role as his true father figure. People respond to authenticity, Joanna told Lawrence during one late-night strategy session. Brendan gives us that. He's our secret weapon. But Marcus had weapons too. Elmer Becker, the good brother, published an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal. My brother is innocent. The piece painted Marcus as a scapegoat, Lawrence as an ambitious manipulator, Brendan as a confused young man led astray. Marcus made mistakes, Elmer wrote, but he doesn't deserve to have his life destroyed by someone he trusted. Lawrence Fuller has everything to gain from my brother's downfall. We should ask ourselves, who really benefits from this tragedy? The op-ed got traction. Conservative media ran with it, framing the story as corporate backstabbing rather than justice. Lawrence's approval ratings dropped. We need to hit back, Brendan insisted during an emergency meeting. Expose Elmer's conflicts. He loaned Marcus the bail money. He's not some neutral observer. No, Lawrence said. We don't get in the mud. We focus on results. Results don't matter if we lose the narrative, Joanna argued. Marcus is winning the PR war. We need to save this company, Lawrence interrupted. That's how we win, not by trading accusations, but by proving we're better than him. But 3 days later, disaster struck. A former employee, Todd Walls, the security guard who'd escorted Lawrence out, came forward with allegations. Lawrence had sexually harassed him for years, Todd claimed, made inappropriate comments, created a hostile work environment. The accusations were fabricated, obviously desperately fabricated, but they made headlines. Becker CEO faces harassment allegations. New questions about Fuller's character. Lawrence watched his credibility evaporate in real time. Clients called to express concerns. Board members requested urgent meetings. The stock dropped another 15%. It's Marcus, Brendan said, pacing Lawrence's office. He's paying people to lie. We need to fight this. Ow! Lawrence felt exhausted. Todd's testimony sounds credible. The media doesn't care about truth, they care about clicks. Even if we prove it's false, the damage is done. Then we destroy Marcus first. Brendan's eyes were cold. I have more evidence. Things I didn't release. His offshore accounts. His mistresses. His tax evasion. We leak it all. Bury him in scandal before he can. No. Larry. I said no. Lawrence stood. We're not becoming him, Brendan. We don't win by being more ruthless. We win by being right. Being right doesn't matter if we lose. Then we lose with integrity, Lawrence said quietly. I'd rather fall honestly than succeed through lies. Brendan stared at him. You really believe that? I have to, because if I don't, then Marcus wins anyway. He proves that decency is weakness, that the only way to survive is to be as corrupt as your enemies. Lawrence met his eyes. I won't let him take that from me. From us. The younger man's expression softened. You're a better person than I am. You're still young. You have time to choose who you want to be. Lawrence managed a smile. Besides, you already made the hard choice. You exposed Marcus knowing it would destroy your family. That took more courage than anything I've ever done. Brendan was quiet. Then, there might be another way. Not revenge. Just truth. What do you mean? Todd Walls. I know him. We played basketball together in high school. Brendan pulled out his phone. Let me talk to him. Off the record. If Marcus is paying him, there'll be evidence. Bank transfers, communications. If I can get him to admit it. Brendan, that's dangerous. If Marcus finds out. He won't. Brendan's smile was sharp. I learned from the best, remember? How to ask questions. How to listen. How to get people to trust me. Lawrence wanted to say no. Wanted to protect this young man from the ugliness of what they were fighting. But Brendan wasn't a child anymore. He'd proven that when he destroyed his own father. Be careful, Lawrence said finally. Marcus is desperate. Desperate people do terrible things. I know. Brendan headed for the door. I was raised by one, remember? Chapter 9. Endgame. Todd Walls met Brendan at a diner in Gary, Indiana. Neutral ground, away from Chicago's watching eyes. The former security guard looked haggard, older than his 42 years. Brendan, he said, surprised. What are you doing here? I wanted to talk. About Lawrence Fuller. Todd's expression closed. I said everything I need to say. He harassed me for years. I'm finally getting justice. Justice? Brendan sat across from him. That's interesting. Because I remember you at the company Christmas party 3 years ago. You told me Lawrence got your daughter into that special physical therapy program. That he personally called the director, pulled strings, saved her from permanent nerve damage. Todd looked away. That doesn't excuse. You cried, Todd. You said Lawrence was the best man you'd ever known. Brendan leaned forward. So what changed? When did he go from savior to monster? People aren't what they seem. No, Brendan agreed. They're not. My father taught me that. Marcus Becker seems respectable, but he's a murderer. Lawrence Fuller seems ordinary, but he's brilliant. And you, Todd, you seem honest. But we both know you're lying. Todd's hand shook. You don't understand. Then explain it to me. How much did Marcus pay you? $50,000? $100,000? Brendan kept his voice gentle, understanding. I'm not here to judge. I just want to know why. For a long moment, Todd said nothing. Then, my daughter. The therapy Lawrence got her into, it costs $8,000 a month. Insurance stopped covering it. I'm drowning in debt. I was going to lose my house. So Marcus offered you money. $150,000. Enough to pay for 2 years of therapy, catch up on my mortgage. All I had to do was claim Lawrence harassed me. Todd's voice broke. I know it's wrong. I know. But my daughter, she's 12 years old, Brendan. She's in pain every day. What was I supposed to do? Tell the truth, Brendan said softly. The truth is that Lawrence helped your daughter. The truth is that Marcus is using her to manipulate you. The truth is that good people sometimes make bad choices when they're desperate. If I recant, I lose the money. My daughter loses her therapy. What if he didn't lose it? Brendan pulled out his phone, showed Todd a document. Becker Industries has a medical emergency fund for employees facing catastrophic healthcare costs. It covers up to $200,000 in expenses. I'm not an employee anymore. You could be. Lawrence is rebuilding security. He needs people he can trust. People who've learned that integrity matters. Brendan met Todd's eyes. Tell the truth. Return Marcus's money. Come back to work. We'll cover your daughter's therapy. All of it. No strings. Todd stared at the document. Why would Lawrence do that? After what I did? Because he's a better man than Marcus Becker. Than me, probably. Than most people. Brendan smiled sadly. He taught me that mercy isn't weakness. That forgiveness is strength. I'm still learning that lesson. But I think he'd want me to offer you the same chance he gave me. The chance to choose who you want to be. Todd was crying now. I'm so sorry. I'm so goddamn sorry. I know. Now let's fix this. The press conference 3 days later was smaller than the first. Just Todd Walls, Brendan Becker, and Lawrence Fuller. No board members, no corporate messaging. Just truth. Todd's voice shook as he spoke. I lied about Lawrence Fuller. Marcus Becker paid me $150,000 to make false harassment claims. I was desperate, scared for my daughter's health. That doesn't excuse what I did. I'm here to set the record straight and face whatever consequences come. The media exploded, but this time the narrative shifted. Becker paid for false testimony. Fuller vindicated. The integrity crisis at Becker Industries. Marcus's lawyers immediately denied everything, but Brendan had evidence. Bank transfers, text messages, recorded phone calls. Todd had worn a wire to his final meeting with Marcus, capturing everything. The FBI added witness tampering and obstruction of justice to Marcus's charges. Within 48 hours, 3 more people came forward. Employees Marcus had paid to spread rumors about Lawrence. The house of cards collapsed. Elmer Becker withdrew his support, publishing a second op-ed. I was wrong about my brother. The piece was heartbreaking. A good man confronting the truth about his family's darkness. I wanted to believe Marcus was the victim, Elmer wrote. I wanted to believe that loyalty to family meant defending him regardless of evidence. But I've learned that real loyalty means holding people accountable. Marcus is my brother. He's also a criminal. Both things are true. 2 weeks later, Marcus Becker accepted a plea deal, 23 years in federal prison. His assets were seized for victim compensation. His legacy was reduced to a cautionary tale about unchecked ambition and corporate greed. Lawrence stood in his office, still strange to think of it as his office, watching the sun set over Lake Michigan. 6 months since the firing. 6 months since Brendan had destroyed one life and built another. The Villanueva contract renewed, Brendan said, entering without knocking. 4-year extension, $320 million. Simon says you're the best CEO he's worked with in 40 years. We got lucky. We got good. Brendan sat. Stock's up 68% from the low. We've won back all but 2 of the clients we lost. Employee satisfaction is at a 10-year high. You did this, Larry. Not luck. You. Lawrence pulled out a folder. Board wants to make the CEO position permanent. Full compensation, 5-year contract. They also want you as COO. Chief Operating Officer? Brendan blinked. I'm 22. You're also brilliant. You orchestrated the most successful corporate restructuring in modern history. Age is irrelevant. Lawrence smiled. Unless you'd rather go to Harvard Business School, I think I just got a better education. Brendan took the folder, scanned it. What about Marcus? The trial? Starts in January. I'll have to testify. How do you feel about that? Lawrence considered. Sad. Not for him. For what he could have been. He had everything. Family, wealth, a brilliant company. And he destroyed it all because he couldn't stand the idea that someone else might be talented. His loss was your gain. Maybe. Or maybe we both lost something. He lost his freedom. I lost 18 years believing I was less than I am. Lawrence turned from the window. But I got you. That's worth more than any CEO position. Brendan's eyes glistened. Dad called me yesterday. From prison. Wanted to apologize. Did he? No. He wanted me to recant my testimony. Said we could still be a family if I just told them I lied. Brendan laughed bitterly. Even now, he doesn't understand. We were never a family. He was my father. You're my dad. There's a difference. Lawrence pulled him into a hug. I'm proud of you. Everything you become, everything you'll be, I'm so goddamn proud. They stood like that for a long moment, father and son and everything but blood. So, Brendan said finally, pulling back. CEO and COO, we're really doing this. We're really doing this. Lawrence grinned. Think you can handle working for me? I've been doing it my whole life. Brendan extended his hand. To the future? Lawrence shook it. To the future we earned. 1 year later, Lawrence stood at a podium at Columbia Business School, addressing the graduating class. You've been taught that success is about winning, he told them. About being the smartest, the fastest, the most ruthless. And maybe that's true in the short term. But real success, lasting success, comes from something else entirely. He looked out at the young faces, hungry and ambitious, just like he'd been. It comes from integrity, from competence, from treating people like they matter, not because it's profitable, but because it's right. He paused. I spent 18 years invisible, undervalued, overlooked. People told me I was wasting my potential, that I should demand recognition, fight for credit, put myself first. But here's what I learned. Competence doesn't need recognition to be valuable. Integrity doesn't need applause to be real. And when you do the right thing, not for reward, but because it's right, the universe has a way of keeping score. He smiled at Brendan, sitting in the front row, wearing the COO title like he'd been born to it. So my advice to you is simple. Be excellent. Be decent. Be patient. The world will try to convince you that nice people finish last. Prove them wrong. Build something worth building. Become someone worth becoming. And trust that eventually, inevitably, competence wins. The applause was thunderous. But Lawrence barely heard it. He was thinking about a 6-month-old baby who'd lost his mother. About a 25-year-old analyst who'd sacrificed his future for someone else's son. About 18 years of invisible work finally made visible. About how the long game, played with integrity, always wins in the end. After the ceremony, Brendan found him. That was beautiful, Larry. I meant every word. I know. Brendan handed him an envelope. This came today. Thought you'd want to see it. Inside was a wedding invitation. Hannah McKenzie. No, Hannah Fuller now. She'd taken her husband's name, was renewing her vows. 20 years of marriage. 3 kids. A happy life. Lawrence, the note read. I know we haven't spoken in years. I followed your story. I'm so proud of the man you've become. The choice you made, to raise Brendan, it seemed like a sacrifice at the time. Now I see it was your greatest success. Thank you for showing me that some things matter more than what we planned. Love always, Hannah. Lawrence smiled, tears in his eyes. You know what's funny? I spent years regretting the choices I made. The career I sacrificed. The life I didn't have. And now I realize I didn't sacrifice anything. I invested it. In you. In becoming someone I'm proud to be. He looked at Brendan. I wouldn't change a single moment. Even the bad parts. Especially the bad parts. They're what made the good parts matter. They walked together toward the parking lot. Toward whatever came next. Father and son. CEO and COO. 2 men who'd learned that the highest form of success isn't winning. It's becoming someone worth being. Behind them, Marcus Becker sat in a federal prison cell, counting down 23 years of consequences. Ahead of them, the future stretched bright and earned. And in between, the lessons stood clear. Competence, given time and integrity, always finds its rightful place. Always. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there. Welcome back to another story on Infidelity Tales Lab. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Foundation Cracks. Marcus Snyder had always believed that military service was about protecting the innocent. After 12 years in special forces, including classified operations that would never appear in any official record, he'd seen enough of humanity's darkest impulses to appreciate the simple goodness of coming home to his wife Mercedes and 6-year-old daughter Emma. Their small house in Cedar Falls wasn't much, a modest 2-bedroom rental in a working-class neighborhood, but represented everything Marcus fought to preserve. Mercedes had decorated it with second-hand furniture and Emma's artwork, creating a sanctuary where Marcus could forget the things he'd done in service to his country. Marcus specialized in what the military euphemistically called direct action operations. His team eliminated high-value targets who were beyond the reach of conventional law enforcement: terrorists, war criminals, and predators who thought themselves untouchable. He was very good at making dangerous men disappear permanently and without trace. Mercedes Johns had married Marcus when she was 22 and he was 24, fresh out of his first deployment. She'd been drawn to his quiet intensity and the security his military career promised. But 8 years of marriage and constant deployments had worn down her patience and amplified her growing dissatisfaction with their modest lifestyle. Mercedes worked part-time at a local beauty salon, but her real ambition was to live the kind of life she saw on social media: expensive clothes, luxury vacations, and the admiration of people who mattered. Marcus's military salary couldn't provide that lifestyle, and his frequent absences left her feeling abandoned and resentful. Emma Snyder was the bright spot in both their lives, a precocious 6-year-old with her father's green eyes and her mother's blonde hair. She adored Marcus unconditionally, counting down the days until his returns from deployment with a homemade calendar covered in hand-drawn hearts. Chuck Logan owned 17 rental properties throughout Cedar Falls, and his business model relied on exploiting tenants who couldn't afford better options. At 53, Chuck had perfected the art of intimidation through legal technicalities and emotional manipulation. He particularly enjoyed having power over desperate women with children. Chuck had been watching Mercedes Snyder for months, noting her growing frustration with Marcus's absences and her obvious hunger for a more affluent lifestyle. When Marcus deployed for a 6-month peacekeeping mission to Eastern Europe, Chuck saw an opportunity to expand his collection of special arrangements with attractive female tenants. The trouble began in Marcus's 3rd month of deployment. Mercedes had been struggling with the rent since losing her salon job due to chronic tardiness and attitude problems. Chuck's initial offer seemed generous: reduced rent in exchange for household services that gradually became more personal and demanding. Marcus's first indication that something was wrong came through Emma's video calls. His usually cheerful daughter seemed subdued, often glancing nervously off camera when Mercedes wasn't in the room. When Marcus asked about the strange man's voice he occasionally heard in the background, Mercedes quickly explained that Chuck was just fixing things around the house. The neighborhood had begun to notice changes too. Cassie Fuentes, a nurse who lived next door, observed Chuck's increasingly frequent visits and Mercedes' apparent comfort with his presence. More troubling were the times she'd seen Emma alone outside, while Mercedes and Chuck were inside with the curtains drawn. Will Baldwin, Marcus's former Special Forces teammate who lived 2 hours away, had promised to check on the family during the deployment. His scheduled visit in month 4 revealed a situation that made his combat-trained instincts trigger immediate alarm signals. Will found Chuck Logan lounging in Marcus's living room wearing only a bathrobe, while Mercedes served him breakfast in a negligee. Emma sat quietly in the corner, unwashed, and wearing the same clothes Will had seen her in during his previous visit. "Who the hell are you?" Chuck demanded, clearly annoyed by the interruption. Will's response was controlled, but carried the unmistakable edge of a man capable of extreme violence. "I'm a friend of Marcus Snyder, the man whose house you're sitting in, the man whose wife you appear to be entertaining." Mercedes flushed red, but tried to maintain composure. "Will, this isn't what it looks like. Chuck's been helping us with maintenance issues." Will looked around the house, noting the obvious signs of Chuck's permanent residence: his clothes in the master bedroom, his personal items throughout the house, and most disturbing, a sophisticated camera system that hadn't been there during his previous visit. "Emma, sweetheart," Will said gently, "why don't you show me your room?" Emma's bedroom revealed the full scope of the situation. Hidden cameras were positioned to monitor her activities, and Will's trained eye spotted other surveillance equipment that had no legitimate purpose in a child's room. Emma whispered to him that the scary man watched her all the time and that Mommy said she had to be extra good or Daddy might never come home. Will's phone call to Marcus that night was carefully coded, but the message was clear. You need to know that your home situation has become compromised. Multiple unknowns have established residence, and your primary asset is in potential danger. Marcus understood immediately. His daughter was at risk, his wife had betrayed him, and a predator had moved into his home. The man who had eliminated terrorists across 3 continents felt a cold fury settle into his bones. The same emotional state that had made him legendarily effective at making problems disappear permanently. Marcus began planning his response that same night, using skills honed through years of operations against enemies who thought themselves beyond retribution. Chuck Logan and Mercedes Snyder had no idea they'd just declared war on someone who made warfare his specialty. Chapter 2. The Predator's Web. Chuck Logan's systematic takeover of Marcus's life followed a pattern he'd perfected with other military wives. The first month involved establishing dependency through small favors and emotional support during the husband's absence. The second month introduced physical intimacy through carefully orchestrated seduction and manipulation. The third month established control through documentation and implicit threats. Mercedes had fallen into Chuck's trap more easily than most. Her resentment toward Marcus for his constant deployments made her receptive to Chuck's attention and gifts. When Chuck offered to waive rent in exchange for companionship, Mercedes convinced herself she was making a practical decision rather than betraying her marriage. Chuck's true nature emerged gradually. He installed cameras throughout the house under the pretense of security, but Mercedes soon realized the cameras were focused on her and Emma rather than potential intruders. When she protested, Chuck reminded her of their arrangement and suggested that Marcus might not be understanding about her situation if he learned the full truth. The psychological manipulation escalated when Chuck moved his personal belongings into the house. He claimed his own residence was being renovated, but Mercedes understood the real message. He now owned her home, her body, and her choices. Resistance would result in exposure, homelessness, and the loss of her daughter. Emma became Chuck's ultimate leverage. He never touched the child inappropriately, but his constant surveillance and veiled threats created an atmosphere of terror. Emma understood that the scary man controlled her mother completely, and that any resistance might result in her father never returning from his mission. Chuck's business model relied on documentation and blackmail. He recorded every intimate encounter with Mercedes, photographed her in compromising positions, and carefully documented her willing participation in their arrangement. If she ever tried to expose him or leave, the evidence would destroy her credibility and her marriage. Nicholas Mueller, Chuck's longtime friend and business partner, helped maintain the surveillance systems and provided muscle when tenants became problematic. Nicholas had served time for assault and enjoyed intimidating people on Chuck's behalf. Together, they had perfected a system of control that kept their victims silent and compliant. The breaking point came when Marcus called unexpectedly during one of Chuck's visits. Mercedes was forced to maintain a normal conversation while Chuck listened from the bedroom, occasionally making gestures that reminded her of his power over her situation. "Daddy," Emma had managed to grab the phone briefly. "When are you coming home? The scary man is here all the time, and Mommy cries." Chuck's face darkened with rage as Mercedes quickly took the phone back and ended the call with nervous explanations about Emma's imagination. That night, Chuck made his expectations crystal clear. Emma needed to be properly managed, or their arrangement would need to include additional terms. Marcus's investigation from overseas revealed the full scope of Chuck's operation. Using military intelligence resources and contacts in federal law enforcement, Marcus discovered that Chuck Logan was suspected in 3 other cases involving military families. The pattern was always the same: target vulnerable wives during deployments, establish control through manipulation and documentation, then exploit the situation for long-term financial and sexual gratification. Austin Hicks, a federal investigator specializing in predatory crimes, had been building a case against Chuck for 2 years, but lacked sufficient evidence for prosecution. Chuck was careful to operate within legal gray areas, and his victims were too intimidated to cooperate with investigations. Marcus's contact with Austin revealed additional disturbing information. Chuck's camera systems weren't just for blackmail. He sold footage to online networks that specialized in voyeuristic content featuring military families. Emma's recorded activities were being distributed to predators worldwide, generating substantial income for Chuck's operation. The revelation that his daughter was being exploited for profit pushed Marcus beyond simple anger into the cold, calculating mindset that had made him legendary among Special Forces operators. This wasn't just about punishing betrayal. It was about eliminating a predator who threatened children and would continue threatening them until permanently stopped. Marcus began assembling a team using contacts from his military career. Clyde Powell, an expert in electronic surveillance and cyber warfare, would handle Chuck's camera systems and digital footprint. Wallace Sweeney, a former Navy SEAL with expertise in psychological operations, would help design Chuck's psychological destruction. Todd Aldrich, a demolitions expert, would provide technical support for more permanent solutions. Marcus's plan required precise timing and coordination. He needed to rescue Emma immediately, document Chuck's crimes thoroughly, and eliminate both Chuck and Nicholas permanently, while ensuring Mercedes faced appropriate consequences for her betrayal. The operation would require all his skills as a Special Forces operator and his complete willingness to operate outside legal boundaries. Chuck Logan had spent years preying on military families, believing that deployed soldiers were powerless to protect their loved ones. He was about to learn that some soldiers brought the war home with them, and that predators sometimes became prey to much more dangerous hunters. Chapter 3: The Hunter's Return. Marcus's early return from deployment was facilitated through military channels that didn't officially exist. His commanding officer, Colonel Eric Wilson, understood that certain situations required immediate attention and that Marcus had skills uniquely suited to handling problems that conventional law enforcement couldn't address. "This is personal leave," Colonel Wilson explained during their coded conversation. "Whatever you need to do to resolve your family situation has our complete support, but it never happened officially." Marcus's transport to the United States included equipment and support materials that would help him deal with Chuck Logan permanently. The military had its own interest in protecting service members' families from predators, and Marcus's reputation for solving impossible problems made him the perfect person to send a message to others who might target military families. Clyde Powell met Marcus at a safe house 50 miles from Cedar Falls, where they established their operational base. Clyde had already begun infiltrating Chuck's surveillance network, discovering the full extent of the predator's documentation and distribution systems. "It's worse than we thought," Clyde reported. "Chuck's got cameras in every room, including Emma's bedroom and bathroom. The footage is being uploaded to servers in 3 different countries and sold through networks that specialize in this kind of content." Marcus studied the surveillance layouts with professional detachment, compartmentalizing his fury to maintain operational effectiveness. How many other families? At least 12 active targets, probably more we haven't identified yet. Chuck's been doing this for years, and he's got a network of landlords in military towns across the region who share information and resources. Wallace Sweeney arrived with psychological profiles of Chuck Logan and Nicholas Mueller based on intelligence gathered from their previous victims. Wallace's expertise in breaking enemy agents made him ideally suited to designing their psychological destruction. "Chuck's a classic predator," Wallace explained. "He needs control and documentation to feel powerful. His greatest fear is exposure and loss of control. Nicholas is simpler. He's a sociopath who enjoys violence, but only when he has overwhelming advantage. Todd Aldrich brought the technical capabilities needed for permanent solutions. His expertise in making things disappear without trace would be essential for the operation's final phase." The team's first objective was Emma's immediate rescue without alerting Chuck to their presence. Using intelligence gathered through Clyde's surveillance infiltration, they identified Chuck's patterns and established windows of opportunity. Chuck typically visited Mercedes between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. on weekdays, when Emma was at school and the neighborhood was less active. Nicholas usually provided security from his car parked outside, but his attention was focused on potential threats from the street rather than from other directions. Marcus's approach to the house was invisible to both the official surveillance and Nicholas's observation. Years of combat operations had taught him to move through hostile territory without detection, and Chuck's suburban neighborhood presented no significant challenges. Cassie Fuentes, the neighbor who had been monitoring the situation, was quietly recruited as an ally. Her nursing background and genuine concern for Emma made her willing to help, especially when Marcus explained the full scope of what Chuck was doing to his family. The rescue operation required split-second timing. While Chuck was inside with Mercedes and Nicholas was distracted by a staged incident Cassie created in the street, Marcus infiltrated the house through Emma's bedroom window. Emma's reaction to seeing her father was pure joy mixed with terror. "Daddy, you came back, but the scary man said you wouldn't." Marcus held his daughter close, noting her weight loss and the fearful way she constantly glanced toward the door. "Daddy's here now, sweetheart. The scary man can't hurt you anymore." Marcus carried Emma through the window to Cassie's house, where she would be safe while he dealt with Chuck and Mercedes. Emma's whispered description of what Chuck had done, the cameras, the watching, the way he made Mommy cry, filled in the final details Marcus needed for his operational planning. Chuck's discovery that Emma was missing triggered exactly the kind of panic reaction Marcus had expected. His frantic search of the house and angry confrontation with Mercedes revealed his true nature and provided additional documentation of his crimes. "Where is she?" Chuck screamed to Mercedes, grabbing her roughly. "That little brat better not have said anything to anyone, or we're both finished." Mercedes's terrified response revealed the full extent of her subjugation. "I don't know. She was in her room an hour ago. Maybe she went to Cassie's house." Chuck's decision to search the neighborhood with Nicholas gave Marcus the opportunity he needed to establish the next phase of his operation. While Chuck was distracted, Marcus infiltrated their surveillance center and began documenting their entire operation. The evidence Marcus collected was overwhelming. Thousands of hours of footage from multiple families, financial records showing profits from selling exploitation material, and correspondence with other predators in their network. Chuck Logan wasn't just a local threat. He was part of a sophisticated criminal organization that specialized in targeting military families. Marcus's communication with federal investigator Austin Hicks provided the legal framework for what would happen next. "We've got enough evidence to arrest Chuck and his entire network," Austin confirmed. "But prosecution is tricky. Good lawyers might get him reduced sentences, and he'd be back on the street in a few years." Marcus's response was characteristically direct. "That's not acceptable. Some problems require permanent solutions." Austin understood what Marcus was suggesting, and his response was carefully neutral. "I didn't hear that. But if certain problems were to solve themselves permanently, I wouldn't be surprised. Some predators have unfortunate accidents." Marcus began the final phase of his operation that evening, using skills that had eliminated high-value targets across multiple theaters of operation. Chuck Logan and Nicholas Mueller were about to learn that some hunters were far more dangerous than any prey they'd ever stalked. Chapter 4. The Web Unravels. Chuck Logan's panic escalated throughout the evening as he realized Emma's disappearance might indicate a larger threat to his operation. His years of preying on military families had made him paranoid about eventually facing retaliation, but he'd always assumed deployed soldiers were too distant to pose immediate danger. Nicholas Mueller's search of the neighborhood revealed nothing, but his criminal instincts warned him that something significant had changed. The way neighbors avoided eye contact and the subtle tension in the air suggested that their operation had been compromised. "Someone's been watching us," Nicholas reported to Chuck. "The question is who and how much they know." Chuck's response revealed the depth of his paranoia and the extent of his criminal network. "Call Salvatore Barber and tell him we might need to activate the contingency plan. If someone's investigating us, we need to eliminate the evidence and disappear." Salvatore Barber operated a disposal service that specialized in making problems disappear permanently. His team had helped Chuck eliminate 3 previous threats over the years. Investigators who got too close, victims who tried to expose him, and witnesses who posed ongoing risks to his operation. Marcus monitored these communications through Clyde's infiltration of their surveillance systems, gaining valuable intelligence about the full scope of Chuck's criminal network. The revelation that Chuck had killed previous victims transformed this from a rescue operation into a war against a sophisticated criminal organization. Mercedes's psychological state deteriorated rapidly as she realized the true nature of her situation. Chuck's mask of charming manipulation fell away completely, revealing the controlling predator underneath. His threats became explicit and violent as he blamed her for Emma's disappearance. "If your husband's back, if he knows anything about our arrangement, you're going to fix it," Chuck snarled, "or I'll make sure both you and that little brat disappear permanently." Mercedes's terrified call to Marcus was monitored and recorded by Clyde's team. Her desperate plea for forgiveness and mercy revealed her complete understanding of Chuck's true nature and her own complicity in endangering Emma. "Marcus, please," Mercedes sobbed into the phone. "I know what I did was wrong, but I was scared and alone, and," Chuck said, "he said things would happen to Emma if I didn't cooperate. Please don't let him hurt her." Marcus's response was coldly professional. "Emma is safe. You're not. Chuck Logan is going to die tonight, and you're going to prison. The only question is whether you help us eliminate his network or face federal charges as an accessory to child exploitation." The offer of cooperation versus prosecution was standard operational procedure, but Marcus had no intention of showing Mercedes mercy regardless of her choice. She had traded their daughter's safety for personal comfort and financial benefit, a betrayal that warranted permanent consequences. Wallace Sweeney's psychological operation against Nicholas Mueller began that evening with a series of carefully orchestrated events designed to isolate him from Chuck and make him vulnerable to elimination. Using intelligence gathered about Nicholas's criminal history and psychological profile, Wallace triggered a cascade of paranoid responses. The first element involved Nicholas's parole officer receiving anonymous tips about violations of his release conditions. The second involved his known associates receiving information suggesting Nicholas was cooperating with federal investigators. The third involved his ex-wife receiving evidence of his current criminal activities and threats to expose him unless he paid substantial blackmail. Nicholas's mental state deteriorated rapidly as multiple threats emerged simultaneously. His criminal associates began avoiding him. His parole officer scheduled surprise visits, and his ex-wife made demands that suggested someone was feeding her information about his activities. "Someone's setting me up," Nicholas told Chuck during an increasingly frantic phone conversation. "Everything's falling apart at once, and I think we're being targeted by professionals." Chuck's response revealed his willingness to sacrifice Nicholas to protect himself. "Handle your own problems. I've got bigger issues to deal with right now." The psychological pressure on Nicholas intensified when Wallace arranged for him to receive photographs of himself taken from impossible angles. Surveillance shots that demonstrated someone with professional capabilities was watching his every move. The message was clear. He was being hunted by someone far more dangerous than any threat he'd previously faced. Todd Aldrich's preparation for the elimination phase involved establishing multiple scenarios for making Chuck and Nicholas disappear without trace. His expertise in demolitions and accident reconstruction would ensure their deaths appear to be unfortunate incidents rather than targeted assassinations. Marcus's final communication with Colonel Wilson confirmed that his operation had full military support. "Handle this however you see fit. These predators have targeted multiple military families, and we can't allow that to continue. You have complete operational autonomy." The authorization to use lethal force without constraint freed Marcus to implement solutions that would eliminate Chuck's entire network permanently. His reputation for making high-value targets disappear without leaving evidence would be essential for ensuring that this particular predatory operation never threatened another family. Chuck Logan's final mistake was attempting to eliminate Mercedes as a potential witness. His plan to stage her suicide while making it appear she'd killed herself due to guilt over Emma's disappearance, demonstrated his complete sociopathic nature and provided Marcus with the perfect opportunity to implement his own final solution. Marcus had spent his military career protecting innocent people from predators who thought themselves untouchable. Chuck Logan and Nicholas Mueller were about to learn that some predators eventually encountered much more dangerous hunters, and that military families were protected by soldiers who brought the war home when necessary. Chapter 5. The Hunt Begins. Chuck Logan's plan to eliminate Mercedes revealed the full sociopathic nature that had allowed him to prey on military families for years. His method was characteristically calculated: stage her apparent suicide in a way that would make her seem overwhelmed by guilt and despair over her daughter's disappearance. "She's becoming unstable," Chuck explained to Nicholas during their planning session. "If she talks to investigators or her husband, everything falls apart. Better to cut our losses and eliminate the liability." Nicholas's enthusiasm for violence made him the perfect accomplice for Chuck's plan. His criminal history included 2 previous deaths that had been ruled accidental, and he understood how to stage crime scenes to avoid investigation. Marcus monitored their planning through Clyde's surveillance infiltration, gaining detailed intelligence about their timeline and methods. Chuck's willingness to commit murder to protect his operation confirmed that he represented a continuing threat that required permanent elimination. Salvatore Barber's arrival in Cedar Falls brought additional complications to Marcus's operation. Barber's disposal team specialized in making entire situations disappear, not just individual targets, but all evidence and witnesses connected to problematic investigations. "Clean sweep protocol," Barber explained to Chuck during their covert meeting. "We eliminate everyone who knows anything, stage it as a murder-suicide involving the unstable military wife, and make the whole situation look like domestic tragedy gone wrong." The scope of Barber's plan included killing Mercedes, eliminating any neighbors who might have witnessed Chuck's activities, and if necessary, staging Emma's death as collateral damage in her mother's psychological breakdown. The plan's ruthless efficiency demonstrated why Chuck's network had operated successfully for years. Marcus's response to this escalation was swift and decisive. His team shifted from evidence gathering to active combat operations, using skills honed through years of eliminating high-value targets in hostile territory. Wallace Sweeney's psychological operation against Nicholas reached its culmination when he received a package containing photographs of his own apartment taken from inside, along with detailed information about his daily routines and personal vulnerabilities. The message included a single line: "We know everything. Surrender now or face consequences." Nicholas's mental breakdown was immediate and complete. Years of intimidating others had never prepared him to be the target of professional psychological warfare. His panic call to Chuck revealed his complete loss of nerve and his willingness to abandon their operation to save himself. "They're inside my apartment. Chuck, they know everything about me. I'm getting out of town before they decide to make me disappear." Chuck's response demonstrated his complete lack of loyalty to his associates. "Fine, run. But if you talk to anyone about our operation, I'll make sure Barber finds you wherever you go." Nicholas's attempt to flee that evening provided Marcus with the perfect opportunity to implement Todd Aldrich's elimination protocol. The staged car accident on a mountain road outside town would appear to be the result of Nicholas's panic driving and poor weather conditions. Todd's expertise in demolitions and accident reconstruction ensured that Nicholas's death would be thoroughly convincing to investigators. The explosive device attached to his vehicle's brake system would activate when he attempted to navigate the sharp curves of the mountain road, sending his car through the guardrail and into the ravine below. Nicholas Mueller's last moments were spent in terror, realizing too late that his years of violence and intimidation had made him a target for someone far more professional and deadly. His car's fiery crash eliminated not just his life, but any evidence of the device that had caused his death. Cassie Fuentes' role in the operation expanded when Marcus revealed the full scope of Chuck's criminal network and the immediate threat to multiple families in the neighborhood. Her nursing background and natural compassion made her ideal for helping evacuate vulnerable residents before the final phase of the operation. How many other children are at risk? Cassie asked when Marcus explained Chuck's broader operation. At least 12 families that we've identified, probably more, Marcus replied. Chuck's network has been operating for years, and they eliminate anyone who tries to expose them. Cassie's decision to help came immediately. Tell me what you need me to do. Mercedes's final conversation with Marcus revealed her complete understanding of the consequences she faced for her betrayal. Her desperate attempts to justify her actions only highlighted the selfishness and willful blindness that had led her to endanger their daughter. I never meant for it to go this far, Mercedes pleaded. Chuck said he just wanted companionship, and the rent was so expensive, and you were always gone. Marcus's response was characteristically direct. You traded our daughter's safety for free rent and sexual gratification. You enabled a predator who was documenting and selling footage of Emma. There's no justification for that, and there's no forgiveness. The revelation that Mercedes had known about the cameras and Emma's exploitation eliminated any possibility of mercy. She hadn't been an innocent victim of manipulation. She'd been a willing participant in her daughter's abuse for personal benefit. Chuck Logan's final mistake was underestimating the speed and efficiency of Marcus's operation. His assumption that military families were vulnerable targets had been based on soldiers being distant and unable to respond quickly to threats. He'd never encountered a special forces operator who brought the war home. Marcus's preparation for the final phase included establishing multiple extraction routes for Emma and ensuring that all evidence of Chuck's network would be preserved for federal prosecutors. The predators would be eliminated permanently, but their victims would have justice through the legal system. Chapter 6: Predators and Prey. Chuck Logan's escalating paranoia following Nicholas's death revealed the fundamental cowardice beneath his predatory facade. Years of intimidating vulnerable women and children had not prepared him for facing a genuine threat, and his psychological deterioration was rapid and complete. Salvatore Barber's team arrived in Cedar Falls to find their target environment completely compromised. Their standard operating procedures relied on controlling information and eliminating witnesses systematically. But Marcus's operation had anticipated their methods and prepared countermeasures. This isn't random, Barber reported to Chuck during their emergency meeting. Someone with professional capabilities is dismantling your operation piece by piece. We need to abort and disappear immediately. Chuck's refusal to abandon his established territory demonstrated the territorial instincts that had made him successful for years, but also made him vulnerable to elimination. His attachment to his properties and accumulated power blinded him to the reality that he was now the prey rather than the predator. Clyde Powell's infiltration of Barber's communication systems provided Marcus with detailed intelligence about their disposal methods and planned timeline. The revelation that Barber's team had killed at least 17 people over the past 5 years confirmed that this was a war against a sophisticated criminal organization that required complete elimination. Mercedes's attempt to negotiate for mercy by offering to testify against Chuck revealed her complete failure to understand the nature of her situation. Her willingness to betray Chuck after months of betraying Marcus demonstrated the fundamental selfishness that had led to Emma's endangerment. I'll tell them everything, Mercedes promised during her call to federal investigator Austin Hicks. Chuck forced me to cooperate, and I never wanted any of this to happen to Emma. Austin's response was professionally neutral, but Marcus's parallel conversation made the reality clear. Your wife's cooperation is valuable for prosecuting Chuck's network, but it doesn't change her criminal liability. She knowingly participated in child exploitation for personal benefit. Wallace Sweeney's psychological operation against Chuck Logan intensified with the delivery of recordings of Chuck's own conversations discussing the elimination of witnesses and the exploitation of children. The recordings were edited to suggest that Nicholas had been secretly recording Chuck for weeks before his death. Chuck's discovery that Nicholas had allegedly been documenting their conversations created a cascade of paranoid responses. His frantic attempts to locate and destroy potential evidence led him to make increasingly desperate decisions that further expose his operation to surveillance and documentation. Todd Aldrich's preparation for eliminating Salvatore Barber's team required more sophisticated techniques than the simple accident that had eliminated Nicholas. Barber's men were professionals with military or law enforcement backgrounds who would be suspicious of obvious traps. The solution involved exploiting Barber's team's reliance on electronic communication and their assumption that they controlled the local information environment. Marcus's team fed them false intelligence about police response times and federal surveillance capabilities, leading them to establish their operation base in a location that could be completely isolated and controlled. Emma's psychological evaluation by military mental health professionals revealed the full extent of the trauma Chuck's surveillance and threats had caused. Her descriptions of being constantly watched and her fear that the scary man would hurt her family provided additional motivation for Marcus's determination to eliminate the threat permanently. The child shows classic symptoms of sustained psychological abuse, the therapist reported to Marcus. She's developed hypervigilance and dissociative responses consistent with prolonged predatory stalking. Recovery will require years of therapy and absolute assurance that the threat has been eliminated. Marcus's communication with Colonel Wilson confirmed that Emma's condition justified any level of response necessary to protect her and prevent similar abuse of other military families. Use whatever methods you deem appropriate. The protection of our families justifies extreme measures. Chuck Logan's final desperate gambit involved attempting to eliminate all evidence of his operation by burning down his properties and killing any remaining witnesses. His plan to stage a gas explosion that would destroy multiple houses in the neighborhood demonstrated his complete willingness to commit mass murder to protect himself. The plan's scope included killing Cassie Fuentes and two other neighbors who had witnessed his activities, eliminating Mercedes to prevent her testimony, and making the entire situation appear to be an accidental gas leak explosion that had consumed multiple homes. Marcus's interception of Chuck's communication with a corrupt gas company employee revealed the timeline and method for the planned explosion. The revelation that Chuck was willing to kill innocent families to cover his crimes eliminated any moral constraints on Marcus's response. Barber's team began implementing their own elimination protocol simultaneously, creating a convergence of multiple criminal operations that required immediate and decisive action. Marcus's years of experience in multi-target environments made him uniquely qualified to handle the complex tactical situation. The final phase of the operation would require eliminating both Chuck's local operation and Barber's disposal team, while preserving evidence for federal prosecution of their broader network. Marcus's reputation for handling impossible tactical situations would be tested against multiple professional adversaries operating on familiar territory. Chuck Logan had spent years believing that predators like himself were the apex of the food chain, capable of destroying anyone who threatened their operations. He was about to learn that some soldiers brought skills home that made them far more dangerous than any predator who relied on intimidation and institutional cover. Chapter 7. The Convergence. The tactical situation that developed on the evening of Marcus's final operation required the kind of complex multi-target coordination that had made him legendary in Special Forces circles. Chuck Logan's planned gas explosion was scheduled for midnight, while Salvatore Barber's team intended to eliminate all witnesses starting at 11 p.m. Marcus's team had 6 hours to neutralize both threats while ensuring Emma's safety and preserving evidence of the criminal network for federal prosecution. The operation required precision timing and a willingness to eliminate multiple targets simultaneously without leaving evidence of military involvement. Clyde Powell's control of the electronic environment gave Marcus unprecedented tactical advantage. Every communication between Chuck and Barber was monitored, their planned routes were tracked, and their weapons and equipment capabilities were documented in real time. Barber's team is moving into position, Clyde reported from their command center. 3 vehicles, 8 personnel, military-grade weapons, and surveillance equipment. They're professionals, but they're operating in territory we control. Wallace Sweeney's psychological operation reached its culmination with Chuck Logan's complete mental breakdown. The final trigger was a call from someone claiming to be Nicholas Mueller, allegedly speaking from federal protective custody and describing Chuck's planned elimination. "Chuck, they know everything," the voice said, using recordings of Nicholas's actual speech patterns that Wallace had synthesized. "They've got recordings, financial records, everything. Barber's not coming to help you. He's coming to eliminate you as a liability." Chuck's response was exactly what Wallace had predicted. Complete paranoid collapse followed by desperate attempts to contact Barber and confirm his suspicions. The resulting communications revealed the full scope of their elimination plan and provided additional evidence of their criminal conspiracy. Todd Aldrich's placement of monitoring devices throughout Chuck's properties allowed Marcus to track his movements and preparations in real time. Chuck's amateur attempts to booby-trap his own house and establish defensive positions revealed his complete lack of professional training or tactical competence. Mercedes's final call to Marcus was a desperate attempt to negotiate for Emma's future well-being. Her complete understanding that she would face federal prosecution had shifted her focus to ensuring their daughter would be protected from the consequences of her mother's betrayals. "Please don't let Emma hate me," Mercedes pleaded. "I know what I did was unforgivable, but she's innocent in all this. Promise me you'll make sure she has a good life." Marcus's response reflected his military training in handling casualties and collateral damage. "Emma will be protected and provided for. Her future won't be destroyed by your choices. But you'll never see her again. That's the cost of betraying your family." Cassie Fuentes' evacuation of vulnerable neighbors proceeded under the cover of a staged gas leak warning that provided legitimate reason for residents to leave the area. Her nursing credentials gave her credibility with local authorities, and her genuine concern for community safety made her warnings effective. The evacuation was completed 30 minutes before Barber's team reached their planned positions, eliminating the possibility of civilian casualties while preserving the appearance of normal neighborhood activity. Austin Hicks positioned his federal task force to respond to the situation as it developed, but with strict instructions to allow Marcus's team to handle the immediate tactical situation. Federal law enforcement would handle prosecution and evidence preservation, but the elimination of immediate threats required capabilities that existed outside legal constraints. Chuck Logan's final preparation involved recording a video confession that was intended to serve as insurance against betrayal by his criminal associates. The recording detailed his entire operation, named his victims, and described the methods used to control and exploit military families. Chuck's assumption that the recording would protect him demonstrated his fundamental misunderstanding of his situation. He still believed he was operating within a criminal justice system where evidence and legal procedures mattered, not realizing he was facing military justice administered by someone who viewed him as an enemy combatant threatening American families. Barber's team's approach to the neighborhood was professionally executed but relied on assumptions about local control that were no longer accurate. Their electronic surveillance detected no federal presence. Their communications appeared secure, and their intelligence suggested they faced only local law enforcement capabilities. Marcus's team allowed Barber's personnel to establish their positions while monitoring their every movement and communication. The tactical advantage of knowing enemy positions and intentions while remaining undetected made the subsequent elimination protocol straightforward and efficient. The convergence began at 10:47 p.m. when Chuck Logan attempted to activate his gas explosion device and discovered that Todd Aldrich had replaced his amateur bomb with a sophisticated device that would eliminate Chuck while leaving the rest of the neighborhood unharmed. Barber's team moved to their final positions exactly as Marcus had predicted, making them vulnerable to simultaneous elimination by Todd's strategically placed charges. Years of making high-value targets disappear had prepared Marcus's team for exactly this kind of complex tactical situation. Chuck Logan's last moments were spent in the terrified realization that he had been outmaneuvered by someone far more professional and deadly than anyone he had ever encountered. His years of preying on vulnerable families had not prepared him for facing a soldier who brought military skills to the protection of innocent children. Chapter 8. Elimination Protocol. The final phase of Marcus's operation began at precisely 10:52 p.m. when Chuck Logan triggered the device he believed would destroy the neighborhood and eliminate all evidence of his crimes. Instead, Todd Aldrich's sophisticated explosive eliminated only Chuck, while leaving forensic evidence that would appear to investigators as an accidental gas explosion caused by Chuck's own criminally negligent modifications to the gas system. Chuck's death was instantaneous, but preceded by the terrifying realization that his apparent control over the situation had been an illusion. His final seconds were spent understanding that he had been systematically outmaneuvered by someone who possessed far greater tactical capabilities than his limited criminal experience could comprehend. Salvatore Barber's team realized their operation had been compromised when Chuck's explosion occurred 30 minutes ahead of their planned timeline, and in a manner that suggested professional intervention. Their attempt to abort the mission and withdraw from the area triggered the final phase of Marcus's elimination protocol. Todd Aldrich's strategic placement of explosive devices throughout Barber's planned escape routes ensured that none of his team would survive to threaten other families or reestablish their criminal network. Each elimination was staged to appear accidental. Vehicle crashes, structural collapses, and equipment malfunctions that would pass routine investigation. All targets eliminated. Todd reported to Marcus as the last of Barber's personnel was eliminated. No survivors, no witnesses, no evidence of our involvement. Local authorities will find what appears to be a criminal operation that destroyed itself through incompetence and paranoia. Clyde Powell's systematic destruction of Chuck's surveillance network included preserving all evidence of his crimes while eliminating any traces of Marcus's team's involvement. Federal investigators would find thousands of hours of exploitation footage and detailed financial records without any indication that military personnel had been involved in the investigation. Wallace Sweeney's psychological operation reached its conclusion with the revelation that Nicholas Mueller's death had been staged to appear accidental, but had actually been the first step in the systematic elimination of Chuck's entire network. The psychological pressure that had driven Chuck to his final desperate act had been carefully orchestrated to ensure he would destroy himself and his operation. Mercedes's arrest by federal agents occurred simultaneously with the elimination of Chuck's operation, ensuring she would face prosecution for her role in Emma's exploitation while being protected from any potential retaliation by Chuck's criminal associates. Her final conversation with Emma was monitored by child welfare professionals who documented Mercedes's complete acknowledgement of her guilt and her understanding that she would never see her daughter again. "Mommy made terrible choices that hurt you," Mercedes told Emma through tears. "Your daddy loves you more than anything, and he'll take care of you. I'm sorry for everything." Emma's response revealed the psychological damage caused by months of living under Chuck's surveillance and threats. Will the scary man come back? Will there be more scary men? Marcus's answer provided the absolute assurance Emma needed. There will never be another scary man, sweetheart. Daddy made sure of that. You're safe forever now. Austin Hicks's federal investigation of Chuck's network revealed connections to similar operations in 17 states, involving over 200 military families who had been targeted by organized predators. The evidence preserved by Marcus's team would enable prosecution of the entire network and protection for all identified victims. This is the most comprehensive elimination of a predatory network we've ever documented, Austin reported to his superiors. Someone with extraordinary capabilities dismantled their entire operation and eliminated the leadership, while preserving perfect evidence for prosecution. Colonel Wilson's debriefing with Marcus confirmed that the operation had achieved all objectives while maintaining complete deniability from military involvement. Officially, this never happened. Unofficially, you've protected hundreds of military families from predators who thought themselves untouchable. Marcus's transition back to civilian life included establishing a new identity and location for himself and Emma, far from any potential retaliation by remnants of Chuck's network. His military service record was classified, and his new life would be protected by the same agencies that had supported his elimination operation. Emma's psychological recovery began immediately with intensive therapy designed to help children who had been exploited by predators. Her resilience and the absolute security of knowing the threat had been permanently eliminated would enable her to heal and develop normally. Cassie Fuentes received recognition from federal authorities for her role in protecting neighborhood children and assisting in the investigation of Chuck's operation. Her courage in standing up to predators made her a model for other civilians who might encounter similar threats to their communities. Mercedes's federal prosecution resulted in a 20-year sentence for conspiracy to exploit children and facilitate predatory crimes against military families. Her cooperation with investigators reduced her sentence, but did not alter the fundamental reality that she had betrayed her own daughter for personal benefit. The criminal network that had preyed on military families for years was completely eliminated through a combination of Marcus's direct action and federal prosecution of surviving associates. The message sent to other potential predators was clear. Military families were protected by soldiers who would bring any level of force necessary to eliminate threats to innocent children. Chapter 9. New Foundations. 6 months after the elimination of Chuck Logan's network, Marcus and Emma had established their new life in a small mountain town where Emma's nightmares gradually faded and her natural resilience began to reassert itself. The house Marcus purchased sat on 20 acres of private land, ensuring their security and providing Emma with the space she needed to heal from her trauma. Emma's therapy sessions revealed the full extent of Chuck's psychological abuse, but also demonstrated her remarkable strength and her complete trust in her father's ability to protect her. Her progress was monitored by Dr. Beverly Cohen, a specialist in treating children who had been exploited by predators. "She's making excellent progress," Dr. Cohen reported to Marcus. "The absolute security of knowing the threat has been permanently eliminated is crucial for her recovery. Most children in similar situations never receive that kind of closure." Marcus's new identity as a security consultant allowed him to use his military skills in legitimate business while maintaining the flexibility to respond to any future threats. His reputation in certain circles as someone capable of handling impossible problems brought him clients who needed protection from threats that conventional law enforcement couldn't address. The financial settlement for Mercedes's conviction and the seizure of Chuck's assets provided Emma with a substantial trust fund that would ensure her educational and therapeutic needs were met throughout her life. Marcus had structured the fund to exclude any possibility of Mercedes accessing the money, even after her eventual release from prison. Emma's first day at her new school marked a significant milestone in her recovery. Her ability to interact normally with other children and her growing confidence in new situations demonstrated that the damage caused by Chuck's surveillance and threats was being successfully addressed through therapy and Marcus's unwavering protection. "Will we always live here, Daddy?" Emma asked as Marcus walked her to school. "As long as you want to, sweetheart," Marcus replied. "This is our home now, and no one will ever make us leave or threaten our family again." Mercedes's attempts to contact Emma through letters were intercepted by federal authorities and child welfare officials who determined that any communication from Mercedes would be harmful to Emma's recovery. The letters revealed Mercedes's continued self-pity and attempts to minimize her responsibility for Emma's trauma. Marcus's response to these attempts was characteristically direct. Mercedes had forfeited any right to contact Emma when she chose to endanger their daughter for personal benefit. The complete severing of that relationship was necessary for Emma's psychological health and future security. Austin Hicks's broader investigation revealed that Chuck's network had been one of several similar operations targeting military families across the United States. The evidence preserved during Marcus's operation enabled federal prosecution of over 50 predators and protection for more than 300 children who had been exploited. "Your operation eliminated the most sophisticated and dangerous network we've ever encountered," Austin reported during his final briefing with Marcus. "The methods you use to document their crimes while eliminating the perpetrators will become the model for future operations against similar threats." Colonel Wilson's official commendation for Marcus's service included recognition that would never appear in public records, but acknowledged his unique contribution to protecting military families. Your actions eliminated a threat that conventional law enforcement could not address and protected hundreds of innocent children from predators who thought themselves beyond retribution. Marcus's integration into civilian life included establishing relationships with neighbors and community members who appreciated his quiet competence and obvious devotion to Emma. His reputation as someone not to be crossed spread naturally through the small town, ensuring that Emma would grow up in an environment where everyone understood she was under powerful protection. The anniversary of Chuck Logan's death passed without official recognition, but Marcus privately acknowledged the date as the moment when Emma's safety had been permanently secured. The elimination of Chuck's network had required skills and methods that existed outside legal boundaries, but the protection of innocent children justified any level of response. Emma's 7th birthday celebration included friends from her new school and neighbors who had become part of their extended family. Her laughter and obvious happiness demonstrated that children could recover from even severe trauma when they received proper care and absolute security. Marcus's reflection on the operation's aftermath confirmed that his choice to eliminate Chuck and his associates rather than rely on conventional prosecution had been correct. Predators who targeted children required permanent solutions, and the legal system's limitations made military justice the only effective response. Well, Baldwin's visit for Emma's birthday brought news from their old life. The neighborhood in Cedar Falls had recovered from the trauma of Chuck's operation, property values had stabilized, and the community had implemented new safety measures to protect children from similar threats. People still talk about what happened, Will reported. The official story is that Chuck's criminal operation destroyed itself, but everyone understands that someone with serious capabilities eliminated a threat that was beyond local law enforcement. Marcus's satisfaction with the operation's outcome was tempered by the knowledge that other predators continued to threaten military families across the country. His new life included monitoring intelligence networks and maintaining readiness to respond to similar threats when conventional law enforcement proved inadequate. Emma's bedtime conversation that night included her traditional question about safety and Marcus's traditional response that provided absolute assurance. "Daddy, will any more scary men ever try to hurt us?" "No, sweetheart," Marcus replied, meaning every word. "Daddy made sure there will never be any more scary men. You're safe forever, and no one will ever threaten our family again." The foundation of their new life was built on Marcus's absolute commitment to Emma's safety and his demonstrated willingness to eliminate any threat to her well-being using whatever methods proved necessary. The man who had spent his military career protecting innocent people from predators had successfully transitioned those skills to protecting his own family. Chuck Logan and his network had learned too late that some soldiers brought the war home with them, and that predators who targeted military families faced retaliation from warriors who viewed the protection of children as a sacred duty requiring any level of force necessary to ensure success. Emma fell asleep secure in the knowledge that her father's love and protection were absolute and permanent. Marcus maintained his vigil, ready to respond to any future threat with the same decisive action that had eliminated Chuck Logan and ensured that his daughter would grow up safe from predators who thought themselves beyond retribution. The end of one threat marked the beginning of a new life founded on the principle that innocent children deserve protection from warriors who possess the skills and will to eliminate anyone who would harm them. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen, and I'll see you there.